Good morning. I'd like to call the September meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District to order. Roll call, Mr. Farrar.
Mr. Chairman. Mark Finkel.
Here.
Albert Hayes. Here. David Bergstress.
Here.
Anthony Netto.
Here.
Jeffrey Rosenthal.
Here.
Robert Moore.
Excused.
Michael Clark.
Here.
Robert Leslie.
Here.
Robert Coltan.
Here.
John Hudson.
Here.
Stephanie Rizicki. Richard Ferrara. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We need a motion to adopt or revise the meeting agenda. I do have one quick revision. We're going to revise the agenda to include a board member expense.
Make that motion.
Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I see we have no speaking guests other than... now I need approval of the July 28th to 2015 regular board meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Second. Any discussion or revisions? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That brings us to the report of the Executive Director.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Everyone, my report is on page 50. I have much to add to it, and I'd like to begin by saying that we are not pulling the plug on our reservoirs, contrary to the current rumors that are floating around. There have been several dozen calls within the past day or so that we're going to drop Great Sacandaga Lake by 3 feet in 5 days, and I don't know if it's a combination of whatever it is, ring of fire talk and observation of the reservoir being low for this time of year, but we're not doing it. And if anyone is approached by anybody in the public, you can reassure them that we're not changing our, and the chief engineer can certainly verify this, that there's no change in plan. But that rumor is floating around out there, and it's
unfortunate.
Well, unfortunate, but perception is a funny thing. I wanted to mention that. With respect to our Conklinville projects, I will say that hopefully by the end of this month, a final intended use plan will be published by Environmental Facilities Corp. With our name on it for making us eligible to fund through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for our Conklinville spillway projects. I will say projects because it includes a couple of components and a couple of years worth of time. That's a positive thing, and we expect that will be firmed up by the end of this month. Also want to note, CSEA local has approached me and asked to begin negotiations for the follow-on contract, which of course there is none yet, which is why they want to negotiate it. The one they currently have does not expire until June of next year. They hope to, I guess, get in front of it. Also, next month there was a little. Our meeting is October 12th. At least that's when it's set for right now. That's a Tuesday. Immediately following. No, I'm sorry. Our meeting is set for October 13th. October 12th is a Monday, which is also Columbus Day. Many times, like for example, this meeting, we would push it off a day until Wednesday. However, it seems to complicate things, and it might necessitate us to push the meeting into the next week, which really compresses our schedule and board report preparation.
Where is the intended meeting?
Stillwater Reservoir.
All right. Well, does that pose, by not putting to Wednesday, the same concern here, people on vacations and then having to travel on the end of the vacation day?
Well,
A meeting on Wednesday is a little difficult for me because I got to take a day off, like I am today. Normally, I work Tuesday from 3 to 7, and then Wednesday's a staff meeting day. So I mean, I'm sorry, Monday I work I don't work until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I can do the meetings. I don't have to take time off. Wednesdays are a little, I mean, I can do it if that's.
Well, my suggestion, honestly, I talked to staff that are likely to stay over the night before, and it appears that no one has a real issue with, because it's Columbus Day, no one has an issue with going up the afternoon of Columbus Day to Stillwater Reservoir. And so I would suggest that, of course, it's your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, that we keep the meeting on October 13th unless there's some other reason.
It's fine with me. I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels.
That's fine with me.
It's fine with me? Okay, so we'll keep it.
Also, on a really positive note, I wanted to report that we have received an order from FERC on August 21st, an order calculating dates for commencement of headwater benefit assessments. It's a really positive development in this long road we've been on. Essentially, if I don't remember the timetable, but last year we petitioned FERC essentially asking them to order Erie to pay their headwater benefits now, claiming that the 2006 amendment to the Reservoir Operating Agreement, and if I'm misstating something here, Mr. Isley, please jump on me and correct me. Our claim was that extension to the Reservoir Operating Agreement, essentially in that agreement, Erie gave away their right to any future claims, and lo and behold, FERC agreed with us. To that end, what this order does is it establishes a payment schedule for dealing with overpayments of the assessments from the previous apportionment going back to from the period of 2002 through 2008. And in a nutshell, there's no interest owed, according to FERC, by us. And it requires that Erie begin paying their headwater benefits from assessment year 2009 forward, so that's 6 years presently, and as well as Albany Engineering, because we already have an agreement with them, or a settlement essentially, where we cleaned up all that, all the past due amounts with them. They should also begin paying us, and the South Glens Falls Hydro, which is one of the 2 hydros owned by Boralex, which folks may recognize that name, owes us headwater benefits for 13, 14, and 15. Everyone else, everyone else remaining on the Hudson, the hydros are set to be offset for those headwater benefit assessments for a number of years, ranging from 16 years on up to 74 years. So, and it's on the last piece of the order. My understanding is that they certainly can ask for rehearing, right, to FERC, and we would expect that at least somebody would. But that they have 30 days to do that. 30 days isn't up, and so far we don't have any knowledge of anyone doing that. So we're in a holding pattern, but we're in a much better position than we were, and it's an excellent outcome. And let's see, the other thing I wanted to bring to the board also was currently in this let me think of the year, 15 through 18 budget, the cycle we just began, we have within that budget under personnel, we have had budgeted for an additional slot. The intention at the time was that slot would be an engineering assistant, which is vacant currently. at 48,000 a year or something right in that range. I would ask that the board might instead authorize me to seek candidates for maintenance specialist, which is the foreman, and well, not the foreman's the head of the maintenance specialist, but the fellows that do the erosion control work, maintain the vehicles, work out of the second or the field office garage and cover all that. I think it's more prudent at this point that we bring in a new maintenance specialist and at some point in the, before the end of the year, by the end of the year, to get them up to speed and it really fill a hole that operations at SFO experience for certainly 6 months of the year, where it's a constant state of robbing Peter to pay Paul between maintenance specialists and the field assistants, and it's a constant juggling. If the board agrees with me, I would follow normal procedure of posting, and we do have resumes. And recently, earlier this year, had conducted interviews of other folks, and there may be a couple of qualified folks on that list that we've already interviewed. I would ask the board's permission to pursue that.
We need a motion.
I just want to ask one question. In the last budget cycle, which would have been 12 to 15, okay.
Correct.
Didn't we add 3 spots into that budget? Because that was right after the layoff.
I can't say.
But we didn't
Did we
fill
fill 3 spots?
No.
No.
All right. So does that remain in the budget? Now we added another one.
Yes. Technically, it would still be in the budget.
Okay. I'm just curious because I know we're short-handed, and I said all along, even when I was chairman, that we laid off 12 people and we haven't brought back nearly enough to do a proper job. So I'll make the motion.
Well, I don't expect that we will ever get back to the level.
No, I don't expect that
we were
either.
in the past, but
I know
rightly so.
we've hamstrung ourselves for years, with a skeleton crew, so to speak.
Did we not tell the second floor that we wouldn't be adding jobs when they approved that contract? I thought that was part of his approval process. He said we would not be adding people.
No, we're not adding jobs. They were already there. We just never filled the positions.
Well, aren't you asking for a new position? Am I wrong?
I'll have to check on that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think we did say that we would not add new items.
Right.
I don't know that we said we wouldn't fill the items we have.
Okay. I was just asking the
The
question.
open positions.
Right.
Okay.
Which are on our org chart, which is
My preference, based on this discussion, is that this issue be tabled, because filling positions or items or titles, it's all semantics, which the second floor might be quite concerned with. So rather than move forward with this, we should get some understanding that we're okay.
Willing to table your motion?
Yeah, I can take one.
Okay.
Table for further discussion.
Yeah.
I'll bring that to the next meeting. If
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, bring the
We could
information.
get some answers.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's why I brought it up.
That's a good point, Mr. Patricia.
Yeah.
we do have a vacancy on our org chart, and it is budgeted.
Okay. And that's why I was wondering if there were others budgeted too, so from previous.
Anything else, sir?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Committee contracts. Resolution approving the GEI proposal to complete the 7-part 12D consultant safety inspection at Stillwater Dam. Mr. Fulton.
Thank you.
That was a long one.
Similar to Conklin Bill, we have to go through the 5-year independent consultant safety inspections in Stillwater. FERC requires it every 5 years, and in April, recall the board authorized staff to procure engineering services to complete that work, the independent consultant safety inspection. And, on July 28th, the board conditionally awarded the work to GEI consultants. We requested and received scope and proposal, which we attached to the memo. And GEI's proposed Lee Wooten. Mr. Wooten was also selected for Constabville, you recall. There is one. The last paragraph is correct in regard to the dollar amount, consistent with the proposal as attached. There's a typo in that second to last paragraph, $27,284. However, the district staff recommends acceptance of the GEI proposal to complete the 7-part 12 independent consultant safety inspection at Stillwater Dam. Seeks board authorization to form a contract for completion of the work and authorization for the executive director to execute an agreement in the amount of $27,284. Answer any questions?
Any questions?
I'll make a motion to accept that resolution.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Committee reports. Governance Committee, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the resolution for adoption of procurement policy revisions, in our governance committee discussions, as everybody heard, we will table any movement of that to the board. With regard to the resolution for approval or amendment for approval of the First Amendment of Legal Services contract, again, all members here were present for the discussion by Mr. Leslie, and unless Mr. Leslie has something to add to that, I would just entertain a motion.
I have a question, if I may, on that, or is it untimely?
It's not untimely.
Okay. Is this the only contract we have with that law firm? Or is
Yes.
it- Okay.
This contract covers all 25, I think, Article 78s. There's a Supreme Court case in Onondaga County, which is also on hold, and the federal case involving NYMO. That's the only case, all of those cases are under this one contract with this one firm. This contract
It just came into being not
just
long ago.
right just came into being.
Yep.
Before, basically, we had a contract with Ainsworth Sullivan, which became a contract with Crane Parente Chervin, which became a contract with Crane and Chervin, which became a contract with Brown and Weinrob, which then when we got to Brown and Weinrob and we were at the $1.4 million number, we cut it off at that point, started a new contract with Gerben and Filazzo, so that we're not making the 17th amendment to that existing contract. And OSC didn't seem to mind, as long as we keep it going.
Any further discussion? Any further questions?
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Neto.
And I'll second that motion.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed.
The third item, again, members of the entire board were present for the governance committee and heard the discussion. Mr. Leslie, do you have anything to add?
No, other than the minutes of the meeting will reflect basically the same thing that was said in the minutes of the committee meeting.
Then, Mr. Chair, the motion has been passed to the full board.
Okay, and I entertain a motion to adopt our conflict of interest policy.
So
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr.
Any further
Rosenthal.
discussion? I'm sorry.
I have one question. Sorry.
Okay.
Someone mentioned that there might be an overriding state policy on conflicts of interest.
think you said that in the future. Procurement
Oh,
might have a
okay.
model policy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there is a model policy put out by the ABO, and that's what we're following.
Okay, fine.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? We have a motion on the table. Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bergstresser said.
Thank you. General Counsel, Mr. Lester.
My report is in here, page 114. I will try and make this brief, but it won't be. As Mr. Clark reported, on August 21st, FERC issued its order calculating dates for commencement of Headwater benefits. And to crow a little bit, the FERC order holds Erie to the 2006 settlement with the regulating district establishing assessments for the 2000 through 2009 period. FERC rejected Erie's claim for basically almost $16 million, 7.3 for Headwater benefits plus another 8.6 for interest. Accordingly, beginning in July 2009, Erie's annual assessment will be $365,100. FERC determined that the credits are without interest, a significant victory for the regulating district. FERC rejected our argument that state court losses should preclude Boralex and NYSEG from pursuing or participating in FERC's crediting mechanism. As a result, Erie, South Clowns Falls, which is part of Boralex, and Albany Engineering are obligated to start making Headwater benefit payments. Curtis Palmer, Fort Miller Associates, Stillwater Hydro Associates, NYSEG, Green Island Power Authority, and Northern Electric, the other part of Boralex, are going to continue to make their offset payments, offset Headwater benefits assessments against our state-based assessments previously paid for decades to come. As Mike said, some of those go out 74 years.
Does that mean they end up paying nothing?
It means that
Presently,
they've already paid
it in
what
advance,
they
so to speak?
should have paid, and it'll be 74 years before they have exhausted the payments they previously made and have to start
In excess of
making
what they
payments.
really-
I'll remember that at that board meeting.
Yeah, yeah. The parties to this proceeding may file a request for rehearing of FERC's order within 30 days, which is going to be September 20th, which I think is a Sunday, so it'll turn over to Monday. They may thereafter elect to challenge FERC's order through the federal courts. I believe it starts at the U.S. Court of Appeals, either in D.C. or in the Second Circuit. My guess is they will go to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Governor Filazzo answered the NIMO Article 78 challenge, which I mentioned before. Oh, actually, going back to the FERC order for a minute, Boralex through K&L Gates has suggested that they would like to negotiate a settlement with us, wherein they would offset the South Clowns Falls and Northern Electric payments in the aggregate, as opposed to start paying South Clowns Falls and take the offset for Northern Electric. We will discuss that, but our preliminary recommendation is probably going to be no. We don't recommend that
Let's see
we
why
go forward with that.
why we should.
Back to NIMO. NIMO issued their, the U.S. District Court issued its decision in the NIMO case, which we talked about previously. I'll reflect that in the minutes here as well. That arrived yesterday afternoon. We really haven't had time to digest it fully. No new news on EFC's finalization of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund intended use plan, through which the Conkaville Dam projects may secure low-cost financing through EPA's Section 319 Non-Point Source Management Block Grant Program. The comment period closed on September 4th, and we have to now await meetings between EFC and U.S. EPA Region 2. like to thank Rick and Stephanie for their help drafting the proposed revisions to the procurement policy. We still have more to look at on that. I did submit the board's annual summary of board performance to the authority's budget office well in advance of the September 30th deadline to do so. And with guidance from that office, prepared the draft conflicts policy. Prepared the legal contingencies footnote to the annual audit and annual independent audit. We have heard no further word from DOT regarding transfer jurisdiction over the lands necessary for the Bachelorville Bridge reconstruction project. DOT continues to work on the maps necessary to transfer jurisdiction over the unneeded lands back to us. And finally, there were no further requests for appeals again during this reporting period. Val will take any questions you may have.
Any questions from Mr. Leslie?
Tried to do that as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Did a great job.
Not at all.
Compliance officer, Mr. Zicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report can be found on page 115. A few items for mentioning include the first quarter utilization report was submitted to ESD. The our current quarter currently includes $7,326 for landmark archaeology. We did purchase a new equipment trailer for the second office. It's $19,105. Should be delivered anytime now. Rebuild garage roof is completed, and the MWB portion of that was $22,735. As part of the New York State Security Study, I have submitted additional information they requested. I took a trip to the Watertown office to review their internal control process, and let's point out that on pages 116 through 118, you'll find the contract status reports. These are included in your board packet each meeting for your review. Any questions on those, let me know. As required by the district's vehicle use policy, all district staff are required to take annual training. I'm currently working on setting up training for all staff members. It has been scheduled for the Sacramento staff, Comptonville, and Albany. Doug is assisting me with Stillwater and Watertown. Cyber risk management assessment being implemented in all state agencies. As part of that, all district staff have or will be taking training on that. And I'm still working with the CFO on updating our system to include online payment for the access permit renewals. Any questions? Not that concludes my report.
Any questions?
I have one.
No? Good.
Thank you very much. Chief Fiscal Officer, Mr. Farrar, I didn't forget you this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, my report can be found on 119, and it ends fairly deeply into this thing. Probably around 170. I have several items I'll cover quickly. Since the independent auditors from KBL left the last week of August, things have been fairly quiet on the Western Front. I'm just trying to catch up a little bit. All indications are with the audit is that it was probably the smoothest audit I've ever been involved in. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they took a little different approach this time around in their mechanism of receiving information. They asked for probably 80% of it that generally would be asked during their actual on-site. So we provided tons of financials to them, mostly electronic, probably 3 weeks leading up to the audit. They came in, and through the whole week, I don't think I spent 15 minutes with either auditor. So, and that's always good. There were very few questions concerning anything going on, other than the typical documents that certain folks in the district need to attest to in terms of internal controls, and are we aware of any fraud or things like that. So I expect this to be an unqualified audit, and I expect to receive it, hopefully, in time to get it on the Authority Budget Office's system by the end of the month. That's good news. As always, all the district financials and cash flow reports follow my summary. There is one other thing. EFC provided me, their finance folks, with some preliminary amortization schedules for the bonding for the Conklinville job. They pointed out very quickly that these numbers can change, but they're clearly well within the ballpark and probably even closer on to the number that we probably will expect to see whenever they do the final financing. They not only provided me the schedule based on their numbers, which includes the very low interest rate, they compared it with a typical bonding that we would do outside. And over 30 years, the savings would be $1,054,000. So it's a number we were all pretty much expecting, but it was nice to see it on a schedule. And so, and both interest rates were fairly what I expected to see on their side and what they used as an outside rate. So I'm very excited about that. One last thing, board member expenses. I believe I gave each of the members the expenses for Mr. Moore.
Is that
in the original?
Is that the only one?
Board packet, that is it.
Okay.
So I would ask the board to review those and approve those for disbursement.
Need a motion to approve Mr. Moore's expenses?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Second?
Mr. Hayes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And that is my report.
If anybody needs, to the last topic about the expenses, if anybody needs the summary sheets to submit your expenses on, let one of us know and we'll get it to you.
Yeah, I saved mine in the computer, and
Okay.
so I'll start forwarding.
Yeah.
I've been a little lax.
Chief Engineer, Mr. Bolton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My report begins on page 171. Summarizes our, in terms of our precip and inflow. Of course, in the continuation of what we saw in July, 50% or less historic average on precip compared to historic average. Sacandaga and Indian Lake, we had about 50% of historic average inflow. Conserved as much as we could and reduced our releases to while also maintaining minimum flows in Indian River, Sacandaga, and Hudson. Released about 86% of historic average. Certainly an attempt also to maintain lake elevation. Black River area, similar fate, if you will, this August. We had about 70% of historic average precip, and Stillwater received about 44% of its historic average inflow for the end of the month. We released only about 60% of our historic discharge, and again, trying to conserve that water while also maintaining those flows in the Beaver and the Black. And as such, the reservoirs are lower than targets, lower in some cases than the historic average, but it's not an awful lot more that we can do to conserve that water, since we need to make those releases to maintain flow in the rivers. The Hudson in particular is at Hadley hit a daily average of 360 or so CFS over the weekend. The lowest I think I've ever seen in my historic flow. With a release of 200 CFS out of Indian Lake. shows how dry it really is, and what a big role even Indian Lake can play, as small as it is compared to Sacandaga, in maintaining flow in the upper Hudson. And combine the release that we make out of Great Sacandaga down to Fort Edward in the Hudson, we're in the range of 75% of the flow of the Hudson River. So,
Rob, how long have you been augmenting now? How long?
Out
of Sacandaga?
Pretty much since the early July. I mean, we recovered out of the from that heavy rain that we had, and since that time making minimum releases, but supplying the flow that's necessary to those minimum Hudson target flows.
So 7 weeks now, or whatever.
At least, you know.
Just as a point of reference, and it doesn't mean much, one of my daughters just came back from California. They were looking to relocate either in Central or Southern. And she said that out there, the rivers are dry riverbeds, and that the reservoirs and lakes are nothing but a mud puddle. She said, you'll see a sign that says lake such and such, and when you get there, she said, Dad, there's nothing but dried mud, and then just a mud hole in the center. And that's all they have out there. So she decided she didn't want to live there. They came back. So we're pretty lucky.
Fortunate that replenishes itself pretty well still. So, to that point, replenishing, I think someone has long information concerning the winter and the almanac, and I think we're in for snowy and cold, and at least from today's viewpoint. And so, despite it being fairly dry out there right now, I don't think we'll have to worry about the situation that they're seeing in the West Coast.
It's on those.
Take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, I mean, it must be a real fire danger, too. I mean, I know that's not the field.
I think, yeah.
It must be a real fire danger.
Notices and warnings throughout the whole summer.
Except for June.
Yes. Yes. The 10 inches of rain.
Any questions, Mr. Fulton? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton.
Hudson and Black River Administrator, Mr. Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report starts on page 201. Hudson River staff attending New York State Insurance Fund 1 weather training. And right now I'm working with Stephanie to get everybody trained on cybersecurity. So we're in the process of doing that in both areas. Mike and I and met with Mr. Thompson, Beaver River. We toured the grassy point and 6 Mile Road to Stillwater Reservoir. Just, and I think Mike was over to that in his last month's report. We talked about a little bit going over there where they got approval from DEC, right?
We visited Beaver River, and where the residents of Beaver River have an approval for a dock system, with the hopes that it would get the boats away from the launch at Stillwater Reservoir and free that up. And of course, it's in a back bay that's not very deep, and I think they have issues now, but for a period of the year. But yeah, we visited that and met with Rusty Thompson, right?
And Mike and I also attended the County Bay Property Owners Association meeting. It was on Saturday in August. And pretty good turnout for that. And everything's going smooth in both areas.
Very good.
And that's all I have. I'm glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
Any questions?
Will they start on the garage up and so on?
The garage will be breaking down tomorrow. Equipment's up there now, materials being ordered, and we hope to do still put in the foundation portion of the
Just
foundation.
before winter?
Yeah. So, yep.
Well, one quick question, probably for Rob. I was talking to the supervisor in Boonville, and he asked me what was going on with the Hawkins Hill. Can you just give me a ballpark schedule? Years?
Well, it really is tied to
The funding?
funding and the bonds.
That's basically what I
So,
thought.
we are in the process of probably 3/4 of the way through the final design.
Mhm.
Our engineering firm is completing the design package. So, once that's completed, which I believe we're scheduled November
Mhm.
to see that from the first end of November to December, then we'll be ready to begin advertising over for a construction firm over the winter with the hope to start following year.
After all we went through, they're still concerned about it actually happening.
It will be repaired.
Right.
Take some time.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other board member questions or comments this time?
My only comment, as I do every meeting, again, I commend the staff for the operations that make our job as board members very easy because of your competence, thoroughness, effectiveness. It's a huge undertaking that the public doesn't understand or see. Thank you.
And understand is an operative word.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I did have one piece of information that we just received on Friday. The bids for the 2 vehicles came in on Friday. We did receive, both vehicles were at minimum bids of $5,000. We did receive a high bid for the Tahoe of $7,502, which we accepted, and a high bid for the F-250 of $6,890.
wow.
So we did quite well.
Did well.
It's one of the better ones we've done. You want to mention?
And also, since something I had forgot to mention earlier, the new treasurer for Saratoga County actually reached out to Mr. Ferrara, wanted to talk about how we, going forward, handle the taxes we owe them, the assessments they owe us, and the past due amount per the consent agreement from 3 years ago, that we are now have to, essentially the final payment to clean up on. At any rate, there's a meeting set for 21st of this month, so.
Okay.
Good.
Resolution to have our next board meeting on October 13th at Stillwater. That's Tuesday, right?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bergstrom.
Tuesday the 13th.
Tuesday the 13th. Second?
Second. Mr. Hayes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Rosenthal.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Mr. Neto.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
everybody.